Hello, good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Nina Warhurst and Roger Johnson.
Our headlines today. A rallying cry for the COP Climate Summit in Glasgow. The Prime Minister urges countries to pull together ahead of the final days of negotiations.
Police in Texas launch a criminal investigation after 8 people are crushed to death at a music festival in Houston.
This is now a criminal investigation that's going to involve our homicide division as well as narcotics. And we're going to get down to the bottom of it.
Shocking footage of dangerous driving. Police in Yorkshire launch a major road safety campaign to tackle falling standards post-lockdown.
Good morning. Norwich City win their first Premier League match of the season, but the smile was wiped from manager Daniel Farke's face just hours later as he's sacked with the side bottom of the table.
And whilst it's a dry and fairly blushy day for many of you today, it will be particularly windy across parts of Scotland. Maybe a few issues this morning. I'll have all the details here on Breakfast.
It's Sunday, the 7th of November. Our top story, the Prime Minister is urging countries at the COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow to pull together and drive for the line as the conference enters its second and final week.
Boris Johnson said that bold compromises and ambitious commitments are needed to tackle climate change, but Labour says the world is far off where it needs to be to keep temperature targets in reach. Here's our political correspondent, Chris Mason.
The people most affected by climate change are no longer some imagined future generation.
It is half-time at the Climate Summit.
Perhaps that will give us the impetus we need to rewrite our story, to turn this tragedy into a triumph.
In the first week, familiar faces strolling the Glasgow stage, big numbers, big promises and faraway dates, but some optimism from the government.
I think always when you have a multilateral event like this to try to get agreement, there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of diplomacy goes to get an outcome. I'm talking to people here at this conference who've been to pretty much every COP since it began, and they're telling me that at this one they are actually seeing action, they're seeing things take shape in a way that they've not seen before.
So, what has been achieved so far? Ministers point to new commitments to net zero carbon emissions by the middle of the century, meaning 90% of the world economy is covered. Ending and reversing deforestation, with more than 120 countries signed up, and over 100 countries have agreed to cut their methane emissions by 30% by 2030. But there are plenty, including campaigner Greta Thunberg, who think this is nowhere near enough.
This is no longer a climate conference. This is now a global North greenwash festival. A 2-week-long celebration of business as usual and blah, blah, blah. They cannot ignore the scientific consensus, and above all, they cannot ignore us, the people, including their own children.
The big aim of this conference is to limit the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees compared with pre-industrial times to minimise the impact of climate change. But this is a huge challenge. It is complicated and it is difficult, involving around 200 countries, each with their own other priorities and concerns.
And so the second week begins. The search for compromise, agreement and promises continues. Chris Mason, BBC News.
Police in Texas have opened a criminal investigation after 8 people died at a music festival on Friday.
Dozens more were injured in the crowd surge on the opening night of Astroworld, which had been organised by the rapper Travis Scott.
Yeah, investigators are now looking into claims that someone in the crowd was injecting other people with drugs. Simon Jones has this report.
A concert venue that's become a crime scene. Shortly after this footage was taken, the crowd, made up of 50,000 people, began to surge towards the stage. It's not clear why. The dead are aged between 14 and 27. Police say they're determined to provide answers to the families of those who lost their lives.
I will tell you, one of the narratives was that some individual was injecting other people with drugs. We do have a report of a security officer, according to the medical staff, that was out and treated him last night that he was reaching over to restrain or grab a citizen, and he felt a prick in his neck. When he was examined, he went unconscious.
The security arrangements are also being looked into. There had been chaotic scenes as the gates opened at the start of the event.
No one, no parent, no friend, no sibling should see their loved one off to a concert by a world-renowned artist and not be able to expect them to come home safely.
Flowers have been laid to mark the lives lost.
I just want to send out prayers to the ones that was lost last night. We're actually working right now to identify the families so we can help assist them through this tough time.
And festival goers are left trying to make sense of what happened.
Oh man, there was just so many people there. It felt like 1 million people there at once, like people just like passing out and like you could barely catch your breath.
It's just sad. Everyone should go to a concert to have fun, and it shouldn't happen.
The organisers say they're committed to working with officials to find out what went wrong. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Another 75 migrants were either rescued or intercepted while attempting to cross the Channel by the French and UK authorities yesterday. A record 853 people made the crossing on Wednesday. The Home Office is calling on French authorities to go further and faster in their efforts to stop migrants making the dangerous journey by boat.
At least 99 people have died and more than 100 others have been injured after an oil tanker exploded in Sierra Leone.
The truck collided with a lorry at a busy junction in the capital, Freetown. Amara Fafana has the very latest.
The blast happened in eastern Freetown after a truck rammed into a petrol tanker. People rushed to collect the leaking fuel, causing a heavy traffic jam, according to eyewitness accounts. There was a vast explosion, leaving fireballs spreading through the crowds. Vehicles in the traffic jam were set alight. Hospitals in Freetown are overwhelmed with injured people, many in critical condition. Most of the dead have been taken to the central mortuary.
We started transporting bodies from 11 until 4 o'clock. The last set of bodies, I had to convey them with some soldiers to the morgue so as to get a total head count.
Just outside here are anxious relatives who have been asked to come and identify their loved ones. Obviously, some of the bodies are beyond recognition, so that's going to be very tricky for them to do, but also a very emotional scene here. Some of them have moved from hospital to hospital, trying to see if their loved ones are actually either admitted or in fact dead.
On behalf of the President, the government, and the entire people of Sierra Leone,
the country's vice president called the incident a national disaster. Police, soldiers and firefighters have worked through the night to clear the scene. Rescuers expect the death toll to mount. Umaru Fofana, BBC News, Freetown.
The dress that the singer Amy Winehouse wore for her final performance is set to fetch around £14,000 at an auction today. The singer wore the dress at a concert in Belgrade a month before she died in 2011. Some more of the Grammy Award winner's belongings will also go under the hammer, with all the proceeds going to the charity set up in her name.
The British musician and rapper Terence Wilson, also known as Astro, who was part of the group UB40 for more than 30 years, has died after what his bandmates said was a short illness. He was 64.
Red, red wine make me feel so fine. You keep me rocking all of the time. Red, red wine make me feel so grand. I feel $1 million when you just see my
UB40, a reggae and pop band who were formed in the late 1970s, achieved international fame with hits like Red, Red Wine and Can't Help Falling in Love. In July 1988, they performed at the Nelson Mandela 70th birthday tribute in London. Astro left the band in 2013 to join another former member Ali Campbell, to create a new group.
Now, dangerous overtaking and reckless speeding, shocking dashcam footage released by North Yorkshire Police shows how some people have been driving carelessly since lockdown rules were lifted.
Yeah, the force says that standards on the roads have started to slip as more motorists get back behind the wheel again. Ian White's got this report.
The terrifying moment a camper van pulls out to overtake and drives towards oncoming traffic. Just one example of careless and inconsiderate driving on North Yorkshire's roads. It's these kind of incidents which can easily lead to a crash, and all too often these can be fatal. With more of us having dash cams in our vehicles, more frightening incidents are being sent to the police. The driver overtaking the lorry is met by a car heading straight towards them on the wrong side of the road.
Now, the way the dashcam technology works is it's very, very high quality. So if we can see a registration plate, if we can identify a vehicle, we can prosecute people, and we've certainly done that.
With so many deaths and serious injuries on North Yorkshire's roads, police have launched Operation Boundary, flooding the roads around Harrogate and Ripon with marked and unmarked patrol cars, bikes and camera vans.
As we come out of COVID and restrictions have lifted, what we've seen is lots and lots of driving where we think drivers are a little bit rusty and a little bit out of practice, and driving standards are really falling. We're seeing lots of things coming in through dash cams where are highlighting dangerous driving, careless driving, more so than we ever have before. We just had a vehicle come through ANPR near to where we are. It's shown as uninsured, so it's a priority for us today, so we're going to try and get it stopped.
Out and about, they were quickly finding offences being committed and dealing with them robustly.
It's illegal, your number plate. So what we're doing today, we're dealing with a number of offences, and we're having a zero tolerance policy on any moving truck offences.
In a first for North Yorkshire, the roads policing unit is being beefed up with special constables joining regular officers, all trying to cut the number of deaths on the roads.
I just implore people to just think about the driving and drive a little bit more safely and more considerately in future.
It's the police officers who have to deal with the aftermath of road collisions, and a careless few seconds of bad driving can have implications that last a lifetime. Ian White, BBC News.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.